Bienvenue à tous. Welcome to Reporters here on France 24. I'm Mark Owen. In this edition, Sudan. Beneath the soil, immense reserves of oil. But the independence and creation of South Sudan in 2011 saw Sudan lose 70% of its potential stock. Khartoum ordered a rush for new oil wells. And this to the detriment of the health of local people. Near these new oil sites, there have been many cases of miscarriage and birth defects. Mohamed Farhat's our reporter. He's been to the very source of this story to meet the people worst affected. A report he put together with the help of the Irish investigative journalism team. Mohamed, tell us about the obstacles that you had to overcome in making this report.
Hello, Mark. There were lots of constraints, like having to travel from the capital to where we were filming. You can see on this map the distance between Khartoum and Al Fular is enormous. It took 12 hours by car. Once we were there, the infrastructure wasn't suitable. As soon as we tried to get anywhere, we found there were no roads. We arrived at the start of autumn, so if it rained, we risked getting stuck because of the lack of infrastructure. Don't forget, this is only 2 years after the fall of Omar al-Bashir, who'd ruled for 3 decades. And this question of oil is still taboo to this day.
Nonetheless, you still brought us a report that is extremely interesting. Let's take a look now at Mohamed's report.
Sudan's West Kordofan state is still reeling from a decade of war with Sudan's southern neighbor. It is an oil-producing region, but few would have imagined the price local people would pay for black gold. The head of one village just a few kilometers from the main site of oil production is angry. He agreed to speak out on camera for the first time.
This area before oil production had good land. The livestock was healthy. Women weren't having miscarriages or other problems. The advent of oil has caused problems for women and for the environment, which has changed a great deal.
Villagers here say the region has recorded a high number of miscarriages over the last 5 years, as well as cases of handicap and physical deformities among infants. 3-year-old Abdel Rayouf will never be able to walk.
These health issues began after oil production started. We as a family had no history of disease, but after oil was discovered, we had these cases. They appeared at the age of 4, 1 year, 6 months, 2 years. We just didn't have them before.
One of this woman's children died last year due to respiratory problems. Her 8-month baby girl was born with a mouth deformity that prevents her from eating properly.
These physical deformities are, of course, caused by the oil. Milk comes out of her mouth as soon as we try to breastfeed her.
Dr. Alhir Mogadam is an environment researcher at the Sudan University of Science and Technology. He's helping us to understand how health and environmental problems are linked to the oil industry. Samples of water, earth and blood will be taken for analysis to Khartoum.
Most of the people we've interviewed and met have confirmed that prior to oil production, these diseases were just not seen to the same extent.
These women have agreed to give blood samples to doctors. They have all had miscarriages in recent years. We're at a clinic in the village of Al Barasaya, 15 kilometers from the state capital, El Fula.
Are you a resident of Al Barasaya?
Yes, I live here.
So you were born and raised here?
Yes.
Have you had miscarriages? Do you have other children?
I have had a miscarriage.
You had a miscarriage once or more than once?
Only once.
We will, of course, take a blood sample from her to see if she's affected or not.
An oil field called Sudan Star began operation in Al Barasaya in 2012. It is managed by the state-owned Sharif Petroleum Operating Company. The government of Omar al-Bashir at the time sought to develop oil production as quickly as possible. It was unregulated. With the secession of South Sudan in 2011, Khartoum lost more than 70% of its oil resources. Most of the country's oil wells became the property of the South Sudan government in Juba. The fall of President Omar al-Bashir in 2019 spurred environmental activists who are demanding development for the region and environmental protection measures. They've documented oil company errors such as the explosion of the number 49 well, located in the Al Ardib oil field, operated by the Chinese company PetroEnergy. One of the activists, Mohamed Isa, took us to the scene of the explosion.
These are the oil wells. They're part of a big oil field.
Guards present at the site prevented us from filming.
We've come looking for information. We came by the gates, didn't we?
These are the procedures.
No problem, no problem. We'll go to the headquarters.
Although the Chinese company cleaned up the area, the impact of crude oil production is here to stay and is being felt deeply. We spoke to a victim of the explosion.
Good morning. How are you? This is the person who closed oil well 49.
Ramatullah, a 25-year-old former employee of the Chinese oil company, helped close the well down.
You were in the oil field when the incident took place. What did they tell you?
I was working at night. The Chinese came and woke me and told me to go to the well, but I refused. They told me, you have two options. Either go there or we'll fire you right now. When we went to stop the explosion, I was wearing a safety helmet, but because there was a strong wind, oil covered my face and got into my right ear. It took us 3 hours to close the well. The Chinese told us that since we'd closed it, they would give us some milk and a box of sugar. They didn't give us anything else.
Despite his efforts, the company sacked him.
5 of us were dismissed. The others are back at work, but not me. I had a hearing problem, so they wouldn't take me back.
As Western nations shunned Omar al-Bashir, China courted Sudan. Khartoum in the 1990s was accused by the United States of sponsoring international terrorism. An economic embargo was imposed. Chinese companies filled the gap. Sudan quickly became an important source of oil for China, accounting for 40% of its production abroad. The oil flowed at the expense of health and safety measures in exchange for promises to develop the area. Dr. Taher is a member of a government committee in charge of evaluating oil's environmental impact.
أي شخص حاولنا نحكي معه في ملف البترول بيكون مرعوب. ما السبب؟
It's because there's been an iron hand. People haven't felt safe because oil is ruled by the security apparatus. Omar al-Bashir left the running of the oil department to the security and intelligence service. And with the Chinese, no one knew what was going on other than the negative impact people were seeing.
Development promises remain ink on paper. People lack water, their only option is to drink from contaminated supplies, putting their health at risk.
People drink from these plastic containers used in oil production. They're filled with water for people to drink from, but people are also drinking petroleum residue. This causes cancer, miscarriages, and allergies. Water is a much-needed resource, but it's a source of suffering for local Sudanese. It's all because of the oil.
It's dirty with oil. Just look. See how dirty it is. There's oil inside.
The majority of the people in the region drink from the containers.
Is this what you use? You drink water from this? Really?
We took a sample of water for analysis. But how were these tanks made available to villagers?
These containers are the source of disease and catastrophe. The group of people controlling the oil sold the containers to people at a high price. They didn't warn the local community about the danger. Of course, these containers are a kind of portable poison. The impact the oil industry has had in the past 20 years is tragic. It's a genocide. I've no other explanation. People have been exterminated.
Back in the capital, Khartoum, we took the samples we collected for analysis. While waiting for the results, we headed to the headquarters of China's Petro Energy company. We were able to meet an official. He refused, however, to answer our questions and was not aware we were filming.
يعني الشركة عندها سنوات اليوم يعني احنا رحنا بكل صعوبة يعني أول ما تصب المطر ما فينا نفوت لا في كياسات لا في مدارس طرقات ما فيش مدارس يعني كل هذه كانت وعود يعني أين هذه الوعود اليوم؟
You're asking questions. I can say that we do have a convincing answer to them, but I repeat, we do not have the right to answer you. We don't have the right to talk to the media without prior permission. Do you want us to get into trouble with the government? Do you know more than we do? The company is not separate from the state. The company works for the benefit of the state, on behalf of the state.
We got a better welcome from the head of the state-owned Sharif company, which runs the Al Barasaya field. Tariq Abdelrahman Abbas has been running the company for just a few months.
I am not claiming that there are no negative effects of the oil industry on people and on the environment. This can't be denied. But it also cannot be claimed that the cases in question are due to oil production activity. Tests need to be carried out by reliable medical laboratories and by experts.
A few days after filming, Dr. Al-Hir Moghadam received the lab results. Analysis of the samples collected revealed the presence of traces of heavy metal in the blood of local residents and in livestock. Those traces include lead and cadmium, which does not exist in a natural state. The final report says that as oil production is the only activity in the study area harmful to the environment, analysis suggests that oil companies are responsible for emerging health problems in the region, including miscarriages and fetal abnormalities.
Our reporter Mohamed Farhat is still with us. Thank you so much for that enlightening report, and it's absolutely distressing to see what's happening to some people there in that part of Sudan. This is embarrassing, clearly, for Khartoum, but also along with that sensitive issue of the country's relations with China, highly involved, of course, in this search for oil.
With an American embargo lasting for 30 years, the Sudanese turned to China, which has become their biggest ally today in terms of oil. For China, Sudan's oil is worth 40% of their foreign oil exploitation. Over the last 30 years, Sudan has used China to help extract these riches, and today we're faced with people who haven't talked about it in 30 years and who suffer in silence.
And among the negative effects, Mohamed, highlighted in your report on the local people, there have been these kind of trenches, almost like a moat, kind of dug to protect the oil sites.
Effectivement, on les voit ici, les tranchées. L'objectif, c'était...
Yes, you can see what the trenches look like here. It was a security measure employed by the oil companies to protect the oil fields from armed groups and rebels. After one time when they managed to enter them. But since then, these trenches have become a nightmare for locals. Firstly, they've changed the flow of water. Secondly, these people own lots of livestock, and their animals fall in and die. Let's listen to one of the members of the NGO Youth for Oil, who explained to us the negative effects of these trenches.
Oil companies have dug these trenches for security reasons without evaluating their impact. They've destroyed our environment. Firstly, they changed the course of rivers. Usually rainwater flows this way, but now it goes in two different directions. Secondly, these trenches are dangerous for our livestock. If an animal falls into them, it would die.
Mohamed Farhat, thank you for that report. You've exposed something that really, I think, will shock the people who've watched this program. Thank you very much indeed. If you'd like to see Mohamed's report, of course, you can again via our website, France24.com. This is Reporters on France 24. Stay with us. Most of all, stay safe.